The changes started happening about a year ago. Little things at first. Things I didn't want to see. Things I made excuses for. Things I convinced myself were normal, were nothing to worry about, and were just my imagination playing tricks on me. Derek started asking questions about my health, but not in a caring way. Not in the way a loving son asks his mother how she's feeling. No, these questions were different. They were clinical, pointed, like he was filling out a form, like he was collecting evidence. "Mom, when's the last time you saw the doctor? What did he say? Did he run any tests? What were the results?" "I'm fine, Derek. I just had a checkup last month. Everything is normal." "Are you taking all your medications? Do you ever forget to take them? Do you need help organizing them?" "I don't forget. I have a pill organizer. I've been taking care of myself for 70 years. Have you been feeling confused lately? Forgetful? Do you ever walk into a room and forget why you're there?" That question made me pause. Because yes, sometimes I walked into a room and forgot why I was there. But doesn't everyone? Doesn't everyone have moments like that? No matter how old they are? I remember Derek doing the same thing when he was a teenager, standing in front of the open refrigerator with a blank look on his face, trying to remember what he wanted. "Derek, I'm fine. I'm 70 years old and sharp as a tack. I walk 2 miles every morning, rain or shine. I volunteer at the library 3 days a week, shelving books and helping with the reading program for children. I do the crossword puzzle every single day, and I never need to cheat. I'm not losing my mind." But Derek kept pushing. Every time he came over, every time he called, he would slip in another question, another comment, another suggestion that maybe I wasn't doing as well as I thought. He started suggesting I shouldn't be living alone. He started pointing out every little thing, turning normal moments into evidence of decline. If I forgot where I put my glasses, he would say, "See, Mom? This is what I'm talking about. You're getting confused. You can't remember simple things." I wanted to tell him that I had been misplacing my glasses since I was 45 years old. That has nothing to do with my age or my mental capacity. That's just what happens when you wear glasses and you're busy doing other things. If I tripped on the porch step, the same porch step that had been slightly uneven for 30 years, the same step that Richard always meant to fix, but never got around to, Derek would say, "You're going to fall one day, and no one will be there to help you. You could break a hip. You could die. You need to be somewhere safe." If I burned a piece of toast because I got distracted reading the newspaper, he would say, "Mom, you're going to burn the house down. You left the stove on. You can't take care of yourself anymore." It wasn't the stove. It was the toaster. There's a big difference. But Derek didn't care about the facts. He cared about building a case. I started to doubt myself. That's what he wanted. That's what he was doing. He was planting seeds of doubt in my mind, making me question my own abilities, making me wonder if maybe he was right. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe I couldn't take care of myself anymore. Every time I forgot something, I would panic. Every time I made a small mistake, I would wonder if it was the beginning of the end. I became afraid of my own mind, afraid that it was betraying me, afraid that Derek could see something I couldn't. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. It's called gaslighting. I learned that word later, from a book Margaret gave me. Gaslighting is when someone makes you doubt your own reality, when they twist things around until you don't trust your own perceptions anymore, and my own son was doing it to me. Karen was even worse. At least Derek pretended to care about my well-being. At least he framed his questions as concern Karen didn't bother with pretense. Karen was cold and calculating and didn't care if I knew it. She started coming over to my house, uninvited, just showing up at random times without calling first. She said she was checking on me. She said she was worried about me being alone. She said she wanted to help me organize. But really, she was taking inventory. I would find her in rooms she had no business being in, looking through drawers, opening closets, examining things with that appraising eye of hers, like she was mentally calculating what everything was worth. My jewelry, my antiques, the things Richard and I had collected over 40 years of marriage, the paintings we bought on our trip to Paris for our 20th anniversary, the china set that had belonged to Richard's grandmother, the vintage watches that Richard loved to collect. Karen would pick things up and examine them. "This is lovely, Eleanor. Is it valuable? Where did you get it?" I would make up excuses for why she was there. I would tell myself she was just curious. I would tell myself she was trying to take an interest in my life. But then one day, I caught her in my bedroom closet. I had been in the garden, pulling weeds and enjoying the afternoon sun. I came inside to wash my hands and get a glass of water. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked through the rooms looking for Karen. I found her in my bedroom, in my closet, going through the shoebox, where I keep my important papers, my birth certificate, my social security card, the deed to my house, my will, insurance documents, everything important. She had papers in her hands. She was reading them. "Karen, what are you doing?" She didn't even have the decency to look guilty. She didn't jump or stammer or try to hide what she was doing. She just smiled, that fake smile of hers, the one that never reached her eyes, and said, "I was looking for your winter coat. You said last week you couldn't find it. I was trying to help." My winter coat was hanging right by the front door, in the coat closet where it always hung, where it had hung for years. She knew that. I knew that. We both knew that was a lie. But she just walked out of my bedroom like nothing happened, like it was perfectly normal to go through someone's private papers, like she had every right to be there. That night after Karen and Derek left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I sat there thinking about everything that had happened over the past year. The questions, the comments, the suggestions, the way they were always watching me, always looking for signs of weakness. And now Karen was going through my important papers, the deed to my house, my will. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. I could feel it in my bones, in my gut, in every instinct I had developed over 70 years of living. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Richard, wondering what he would do, wondering what he would tell me. I could almost hear his voice. "Eleanor, protect yourself. Don't be a fool. You know what's happening. You've known for a while. Stop making excuses and do something about it." The next morning I called a locksmith. I had all the locks changed. Then I went to the bank and moved all my important papers to a safe deposit box. My birth certificate, my social security card, the deed to my house, my will, everything that Karen had been looking at. Something in my gut told me I needed to protect myself. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew something wasn't right. For the first time in years, I was listening to my instincts instead of making excuses for my son. About 2 weeks after the incident with Karen in my closet, something happened that changed everything. I was sitting at my computer, checking my email. I'm not as tech-savvy as younger people, but I know how to use email and do basic things online. Richard and I bought a computer 10 years ago so we could video chat with the grandchildren, and I've been using it ever since. I opened my inbox and saw an email from Derek. The subject line just said, "Re-mom situation." I thought it was strange. Derek usually texted me or called me. He rarely sent emails, and "mom situation" was an odd way to phrase things. I opened the email, and my world fell apart. It wasn't meant for me. It was meant for someone named Robert Jenkins at Jenkins Family Law. But Derek had made a mistake. He had clicked on the wrong contact. My name in his contact list is Mom Eleanor. Right below that is Robert Jenkins. He clicked on the wrong one. His fingers slipped, I guess. A simple mistake, the kind of mistake that happens all the time. But this mistake revealed everything. The email said, "Robert, we need to move fast on the conservatorship. My mother is starting to ask questions about where her money went. She called the bank last week to check on her accounts, and the teller mentioned some of the transfers. She doesn't know the full extent yet. But if she figures out the truth, she'll write me out of the will. Karen found a facility that will take her tomorrow, but we can't get her to agree to go. She's stubborn, and she thinks she's still capable of living independently. We need to make it happen at the birthday party in front of witnesses, so there are people to testify that she's confused and can't take care of herself. Once we have the conservatorship, we can sell the house and move her wherever we want. Let me know if you need anything else from me before we file the paperwork. Derek." I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. Then I printed it out because I knew I would need proof. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage, from betrayal, from the realization that everything I had suspected was true, and worse than I had imagined. They weren't just trying to put me in a nursing home. They were trying to take control of everything. My money, my house, my life. They wanted a conservatorship, which meant they would have legal control over all my decisions. I would have no say in anything. I would be like a child, with Derek and Karen as my parents, and they had been stealing from me. The email mentioned transfers, money that had been moved without my knowledge, money that was missing from my accounts. I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. My son, my miracle baby, the child I had waited 15 years to have, the child I had given everything to. He was planning to steal from me, to lock me away, to take everything I had worked for my entire life. I sat on the bathroom floor for a long time crying for the son I thought I had, crying for the relationship that never really existed, crying for all the money I had given him over the years, all the sacrifices I had made, all the times I had defended him to Richard. Richard had been right. All along, Richard had been right. And now Richard was gone, and I was alone, and I had to figure out what to do. The next morning, I went to the bank. I sat down with the branch manager, a nice woman named Patricia, who had known me for years. I told her I wanted a complete record of all my accounts. Every transaction, every transfer, everything. She looked uncomfortable. She said there had been some unusual activity on my accounts. She said she had been meaning to call me about it. Over the past 18 months, someone had transferred over $80,000 out of my savings account. Small amounts at first. A few hundred here, a few thousand there. Always just under the threshold that would trigger automatic alerts. The transfers were authorized by Derek, because Derek's name was on my account. I had added him years ago after Richard died. I thought it was a good idea. I thought that if something happened to me, Derek would need access to my money to take care of things. Richard had always handled the finances, and I didn't want to be unprepared. I never imagined my own son would steal from me. $80,000. gone. On top of the $200,000 I had given him willingly over the years. That's $280,000. More than half of everything Richard and I had saved. Patricia asked if I wanted to file a fraud report. I said no, not yet. I needed to think. I needed to plan. What I really needed was a lawyer. I went to see Patricia Hendricks that same afternoon. Not the Patricia from the bank. A different Patricia. Patricia Hendricks was the best estate lawyer in town. She had helped Richard and me set up our wills years ago. She knew our situation. I sat in her office and told her everything. The email, the money, the conservatorship, the birthday party plan. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. Eleanor, this is elder abuse. What your son and daughter-in-law are doing is illegal. We could go to the police right now and have them arrested. I shook my head. I don't want to do that. Not yet. I want to handle this my way. What do you mean? I told her my plan. I told her what I wanted to do at the birthday party. She listened, and slowly a smile spread across her face. Eleanor, I've been doing this job for 30 years, and I have to say, that is one of the most satisfying plans I've ever heard. We spent the next 3 hours going over everything. She helped me remove Derek's name from all my accounts. She helped me change my will, cutting Derek out completely. She helped me draft letters to various organizations, making sure that no one could make decisions for me without my consent. And she helped me prepare for the birthday party, the party where my son was planning to announce my exile, the party where I was going to turn the tables on him. The birthday party was Karen's idea. She called me about a month before my birthday and said she wanted to throw me a big 70th birthday celebration at my house. It'll be wonderful, Eleanor. All your friends, all your family. We'll have catering, decorations, a live band. It'll be the party of the year. You deserve it. Knowing what I knew now, I understood exactly why she wanted to have the party. She wanted witnesses. She wanted a big audience for Derek's announcement. She wanted people who could later testify that I was confused, that I needed help, that putting me in a nursing home was the right decision, but I played along. I pretended I didn't know anything. I pretended to be grateful for their generosity, for their thoughtfulness, for their love. I said yes to everything Karen suggested. Yes to the catering. Yes to the decorations. Yes to the live band. Yes to the guest list of 47 people, including distant relatives and old coworkers and everyone else they could think of to invite. For the next month, I played the role of the oblivious mother. I smiled when Karen came over to discuss party details. I nodded when Derek asked about my health. I pretended everything was normal, but inside, I was counting down the days. Inside, I was preparing for battle. Margaret was the only person I told. I needed someone I could trust, someone who could help me if things went wrong. I showed her the email. I told her about the money. I explained the plan. Her face went through a dozen different emotions while I talked. Shock, anger, disbelief, sadness, and finally, determination. Eleanor, I will be right there beside you. Whatever you need. Those horrible, horrible people. After everything you've done for them. I know, Margaret. I know. Richard would be so proud of you. You know that, right? He would be so proud. I felt tears prick my eyes. I hope so. I really hope so. When Derek was 16, he crashed our car. Not just any crash. A serious crash that totaled the vehicle and could have killed him and the 3 friends who were in the car with him. He was showing off. That's what the police report said. He was driving too fast on a winding road, trying to impress his friends, trying to prove he was cool, trying to be the big man. He lost control on a curve, went off the road, and slammed into a tree. By some miracle, nobody was seriously hurt. Derek had a broken arm. His friends had cuts and bruises. The car was destroyed, wrapped around that tree like a crushed soda can. Richard was furious. I had never seen him so angry. His face turned red, and the vein in his forehead was pulsing, and his hands were shaking. He told Derek that he would work to pay for the repairs. He told Derek that he would get a job and pay back every single cent. He told Derek that actions have consequences, and it was time to learn that lesson. I agreed with Richard. At least, I said I agreed. But then I saw Derek's face, his arm in a cast, tears running down his cheeks, my little boy, scared and hurting and sorry. So I covered it. I took money from our savings, money we had been putting aside for years, money that was supposed to be for emergencies and retirement and our future. I told Richard it was an insurance payout. I forged the paperwork. I lied to my husband's face so my son wouldn't have to face the consequences of his actions. Richard found out eventually. He always found out. But by then, the money was spent, and there was nothing to do about it. He just looked at me with those sad eyes of his and said, "Eleanor, you're going to regret this someday. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am." When Derek was 18, he wanted to go to an expensive private college. His grades weren't good enough for scholarships. His test scores were average at best. But he had his heart set on this particular school because his friends were going there, and it had a good party reputation. Richard said no. He said Derek could go to the community college for 2 years, get his grades up, and then transfer. He said we couldn't afford private college tuition. He said Derek needed to be realistic about his options. Derek threw another tantrum, a grown man tantrum this time, where he slammed doors and said we were ruining his life and threatened to never speak to us again. So I took out a loan, a private loan with a terrible interest rate. I didn't tell Richard about it until the first payment was due. By then, Derek was already enrolled, already living in the dorms, already spending money we didn't have on a lifestyle he hadn't earned. Richard was quiet for a long time after that, quiet in a way that scared me. Finally, he said, "Eleanor, I love you. I will always love you. But you're destroying our son. And when everything falls apart, don't say I didn't warn you." When Derek was 22, he dropped out of college. He was 1 semester away from graduating, but he said he didn't need a degree. He said college was a waste of time. He said he was going to start his own business and become a millionaire before he was 30. Richard was beyond furious. He had worked double shifts for 4 years to help pay for that education. He had sacrificed vacations and new clothes and home repairs so Derek could have the college experience he wanted. And now, Derek was throwing it all away. But I supported Derek. I told Richard that maybe Derek knew something we didn't. I told him that plenty of successful people didn't have degrees. I told him that we should believe in our son. And then I gave Derek $10,000 to start his business, a business selling some kind of health supplement that Derek's friend had told him about. A pyramid scheme, basically, though I didn't know that at the time. The business failed in 8 months. Derek lost every penny. He never paid me back. He never even apologized. Richard didn't say anything that time. He just shook his head and went out to the garage. I heard him in there, sawing and hammering, working on something, building something with his hands because that was how he dealt with frustration and disappointment. He built me a jewelry box that night, a beautiful jewelry box made of cherry wood with intricate carvings on the lid. He gave it to me the next morning without saying a word. I still have it. It sits on my dresser, And every time I look at it, I think about Richard and all the things he tried to tell me that I refused to hear. I'm telling you these things because I need you to understand the pattern. I need you to see what I refused to see for so many years. I created this. I taught my son that he could have anything he wanted, that there would never be consequences, that Mom would always fix it, that Mom would always write the check, that Mom would always smooth things over. Every time Richard tried to teach Derek about responsibility, I undermined him. Every time Derek faced a consequence for his actions, I rescued him. Every time life tried to teach my son a lesson, I stepped in and prevented the lesson from being learned. And now, standing at my 70th birthday party, I was about to face the result of 40 years of enabling. Derek married Karen when he was 31. I remember the first time he brought her home to meet us. It was a Sunday dinner, pot roast and mashed potatoes and green beans from the garden. Richard and I had cleaned the house from top to bottom. We wanted to make a good impression. Karen walked in and immediately started criticizing. Not out loud, not directly, but I could see it in her eyes. The way she looked at our furniture like it was beneath her. The way she touched the curtains and wrinkled her nose slightly. The way she picked at her food like she was afraid it might poison her. After dinner, when Karen went to the bathroom, Richard leaned over to me and whispered, "I don't like her, Eleanor. There's something off about that woman." I shooshed him. I told him he was being judgmental. I told him to give her a chance. But deep down, I felt it too. There was something about Karen that made my skin crawl. Something cold behind her smile. Something calculating in the way she looked at Derek, at our house, at everything around her. I didn't like her from the start, but I kept my mouth shut because I wanted my son to be happy. That was always my excuse. I wanted Derek to be happy, no matter what it cost me, no matter what it cost anyone. Karen came from money, old money. Her family had been wealthy for generations. They had a big house in the nice part of town, the kind of house with columns out front and a circular driveway and a staff of people who kept everything running smoothly. They had 2 vacation homes, one in the mountains and one at the beach, and they had a trust fund that paid Karen's bills without her ever having to work a day in her life. But Karen's father was smart, smarter than I gave him credit for. He set up that trust fund so Karen could never touch the principal. She got a monthly allowance, and that was it. Enough to live comfortably, but not enough to live extravagantly. Not enough to fund the lifestyle Karen thought she deserved. Karen was used to a certain lifestyle. Growing up, she had been given everything she wanted. Private schools, designer clothes, vacations to Europe, a new car on her 16th birthday. She expected the world to hand her things, just like Derek did. They were perfect for each other in the worst possible way. And Derek was used to getting what he wanted too. So when they got married and realized that Karen's monthly allowance wasn't enough to fund their dreams, they started looking at me. I remember the first time Derek asked me for money after the wedding. They had been married 6 months. They came over for dinner, and afterward, Derek pulled me aside while Karen kept Richard busy with some story about her charity work. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." I could tell by his tone that he wanted something. I had heard that tone 1,000 times before. Karen and I are planning a trip to Italy for our anniversary. 3 weeks, first-class flights, luxury hotels. It's going to be amazing. That sounds wonderful, honey. The thing is, it's expensive, and Karen's allowance only covers so much. I was hoping maybe you could help us out. I should have said no. I should have told him that they were adults now, and that they needed to live within their means, that it wasn't my job to fund their vacations. But I looked at his face, my little miracle boy, my only child, and I couldn't say no. How much do you need? $10,000 should cover it. $10,000 for a vacation, for 3 weeks of luxury that they hadn't earned and couldn't afford. I gave it to him. I wrote the check that same night. But before I handed it over, Derek said something that stuck with me. Something that should have been a warning sign, but I was too blind to see it at the time. Mom, you're not using all that money just sitting in the bank. Dad left you plenty. You should enjoy seeing us happy. That's what he said, word for word. I remember because it hit me strange when he said it. It didn't feel like he was asking for help. It felt like he was telling me what to do with my own money. It felt like he was entitled to it. Like Richard and I had spent 40 years working and saving and sacrificing, and now Derek had a right to spend it however he wanted. But I gave it to him anyway, because that's what I always did. I gave Derek what he wanted. Over the next 5 years, the requests kept coming, each one bigger than the last, each one with less gratitude and more expectation. 6 months after the Italy trip, Derek called me. They needed a down payment on a house, not just any house. A house in the nice neighborhood, near Karen's parents. A house with 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and a swimming pool in the backyard. A house that cost $600,000. Mom, we need $30,000 for the down payment. Karen's dad won't help because he says we need to learn to stand on our own feet. Can you believe that? His own daughter. I gave him the $30,000. It was almost half of my savings at that point, but I gave it to him. A year later, Karen needed a new car. Her current car was embarrassing. It was only 3 years old, but it wasn't the right brand. It wasn't impressive enough for the neighborhood they lived in. Mom, Karen is really upset. She feels like everyone is judging her because of her car. She needs something nicer, something that fits in. I gave them $22,000 for a luxury SUV. Karen didn't even thank me. She just drove off in her new car and didn't call me for 2 weeks. Then the grandchildren came. Emma first, then Jake 2 years later. Beautiful children, innocent children who had no idea what was happening around them. Private school, of course. Public school wasn't good enough for Karen's children. They needed to go to the same private academy where Karen had gone, where all the wealthy families sent their children, where the tuition was $15,000 per child per year. Mom, we can't afford the tuition on our own. The kids' future is at stake. You wouldn't want them to go to public school, would you? With all those problems? With all those, other kinds of kids? I didn't like the way Karen said that. I didn't like what she was implying. But I paid the tuition anyway. $15,000 a year, times 2 kids for 3 years. That was $90,000. Money I would never see again. I was hemorrhaging money. Money that Richard and I had saved our entire lives. Money that was supposed to last me until I died. Money that was supposed to give me security in my old age, when I couldn't work anymore, when I might need care, when unexpected things might happen. Richard had been so careful with our finances. He had planned everything. He had calculated how much we would need to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. He had set aside money for emergencies, for medical expenses, for all the things that can go wrong when you get older. And I was giving it away, piece by piece, check by check. Every time Derek asked, I opened my wallet and handed over whatever he wanted. My friends tried to warn me. They could see what was happening, even when I couldn't. My best friend, Margaret, she sat me down one day about 3 years ago. We were having coffee in my kitchen at the old wooden table that Richard had built when we first moved into the house. The same table where we had shared 1,000 meals, 1,000 conversations, 1,000 moments of our lives together. Margaret looked at me with those serious eyes of hers. She had known me for 40 years. She had been my maid of honor at my wedding. She had held my hand at Richard's funeral. She knew me better than anyone. "Eleanor," she said. "That's my name, Eleanor Grace Mitchell. The name my parents gave me 70 years ago, when the world was a different place, and I was just a tiny baby with no idea what life had in store for me. Eleanor, you need to stop. You're giving away your entire future. Every time Derek calls, you write him a check. Do you even know how much you've given him over the years?" I shook my head. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to add up the numbers. "I do," Margaret said, "because I've been watching. It's over $200,000, Eleanor. $200,000 in 15 years. That's not helping your son. That's enabling him. That's letting him drain you dry." I started to protest, but she held up her hand to stop me. "What happens when you need that money? What happens when you get sick? What happens when you need care, or something breaks in this house, or there's an emergency? What are you going to do then? Ask Derek to pay you back? He won't. You know he won't." I told her she was overreacting. I told her Derek would take care of me when the time came. I told her he was my son, my only son, and family takes care of family. Blood is thicker than water. That's what my mother always said. Margaret shook her head, slowly, the way you shake your head when someone you love is making a terrible mistake, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. "I hope you're right," she said. "I really do. But I've seen this before, Eleanor. I've seen families torn apart by money. I've seen parents give everything to their children and end up with nothing, and it never ends the way you think it will. I should have listened to Margaret. I should have listened to her in the way I should have listened to Richard all those years ago. But I didn't. I made excuses. I told myself it would be different for us. I told myself Derek loved me and would never abandon me. I was wrong. My son stood up at my 70th birthday party, tapped his glass with a fork, and said those words in front of everyone I love. "Mom is moving to a nursing home today." I looked around the room, 47 people staring at me. My friends, my neighbors, my church group, my book club, my grandchildren with frosting on their little fingers from sneaking bites of the cake before it was cut. And my son, Derek, standing there with a smile on his face, like he just announced, "I won the lottery," like he was doing me some kind of favor, like this was good news that everyone should celebrate. He wasn't asking me. He was telling me, in my own house, at my own party, in front of everyone who matters to me. My daughter-in-law, Karen, was already walking toward the stairs. She had boxes in her hands, empty boxes, cardboard boxes that she must have brought in through the back door, while everyone was distracted with appetizers and small talk. She was going to pack my things. Right then. Right there. While the birthday cake was still sitting on the table with 70 candles, waiting to be lit. I want you to remember something as I tell you this story. I want you to remember that I built this house. My husband Richard and I, we built it with our own hands 43 years ago. We poured the foundation on a hot July day when the temperature hit 102 degrees. We hammered every nail, sometimes working until midnight by the light of construction lamps. We planted every tree in that backyard, watching them grow from tiny saplings into the towering oaks and maples that now shade the entire property. Richard passed away 8 years ago. Cancer. It started in his lungs and spread everywhere before the doctors even knew what was happening. He was gone in 4 months. 4 months from diagnosis to funeral. And when he died, this house became my whole world. Every room has his memory in it. Every corner has our story. The kitchen where we slow danced to Frank Sinatra while dinner burned on the stove. The living room where we watched our son take his first steps. The bedroom where Richard held my hand every single night for 42 years of marriage. And my son just announced, in front of everyone, that I was leaving today. But here's the thing about being 70 years old. You've seen enough. You've survived enough. You've buried parents and siblings and friends and the love of your life. You've weathered storms that would break younger people in half. And you don't scare easy anymore. So I put down my glass of punch. I set it very carefully on the mantel beside the photograph of Richard and me on our wedding day. I stood up straight, the way my mother taught me to stand when I was just a little girl. I looked my son dead in the eyes, and what I did next made every single person in that room gasp. Let me take you back a little bit, because you need to understand how we got here. You need to understand who Derek was, who he became, and the moment I should have seen this coming, Derek was my miracle baby. I was 40 years old when I had him. The doctors told me I couldn't have children. Something about my hormones, something about my anatomy, something about statistics and probabilities, and all those medical terms that basically meant give up hope. Richard and I had tried for 15 years. 15 years of disappointment. 15 years of negative pregnancy tests that I would hide in the bottom of the trash can so Richard wouldn't see me crying. 15 years of watching everyone around us have babies while we went home to an empty nursery that we had painted yellow because we didn't know if it would be a boy or a girl, but we wanted to be ready. We tried everything. Fertility treatments that cost more than our car, special diets, supplements, prayers. Richard even started going to church with me, and he hadn't set foot in a church since his confirmation when he was 14 years old. Nothing worked. Year after year, nothing worked. And then, one day, I found out I was pregnant. I still remember the moment like it happened this morning. I was standing in our tiny apartment bathroom, the one we had before we built the house. The tiles were cracked. The faucet dripped constantly, no matter how many times Richard tried to fix it. The mirror had a chip in the corner from when I accidentally hit it with a hairbrush. Richard was at work. He was doing construction then, working 60 hours a week to save money for the house we dreamed of building. I had taken the pregnancy test on a whim, not really expecting anything. I had stopped expecting anything years before. I watched those 2 lines appear. Slowly at first, then darker and darker until there was no denying what I was seeing. And I fell to my knees on that cold tile floor, and I cried, like I never cried before. Not sad tears, not even happy tears exactly. More like release tears. 15 years of hoping and praying and disappointment, all pouring out of me at once. When Richard came home that night, I didn't say anything at first. I just handed him the test. He looked at it. He looked at me. He looked at the test again. Then he picked me up and spun me around that tiny apartment, knocking over a lamp and not caring at all. We were going to be parents. After all those years, we were finally going to be parents. Derek was our everything from that moment on. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe we loved him too much. Maybe we gave him too much. Maybe we never taught him what it meant to struggle. what it meant to earn something, what it meant to appreciate what you have. Richard always said we were spoiling him. I remember conversations we had late at night, after Derek was asleep, when Richard would express his concerns. He would say, "Eleanor, we're not doing him any favors. He needs to learn that the world doesn't hand you things." And I would always defend Derek. I would say, "He's just a boy. He's our only boy. Let him be happy." I would say that we waited so long for him. We deserve to enjoy him. I would say that there was nothing wrong with giving our child a good life. Richard would shake his head, but he would let it go. He loved Derek too. He wanted Derek to be happy too. He just saw something I refused to see. When Derek was 8 years old, he wanted a puppy. Not just any puppy. He wanted a purebred golden retriever from a breeder 2 hours away. $300, which was a lot of money for us back then. Richard said no. He said if Derek wanted a dog, we could go to the shelter and adopt one for $20. Derek threw a tantrum. A real tantrum. The kind where he screamed and cried and said we didn't love him. I couldn't stand to see him so upset. So I went behind Richard's back and put a deposit on that golden retriever. I told Richard we found the dog at a rescue, and the adoption fee was higher than expected. Richard knew I was lying. I could see it in his eyes. But he didn't say anything. He just shook his head and went out to the garage to work on whatever project he was building at the time. When Derek was 12, he wanted a bicycle. Not just any bicycle, the most expensive one at the store. The one with 21 gears and shock absorbers and a frame made of some special lightweight material. $300 in 1986. Richard said no. He said Derek could have the $50 bicycle that worked just fine, or he could mow lawns all summer and earn the money himself. Derek didn't want to mow lawns. Derek didn't want to work for anything, so I went behind Richard's back again and bought the expensive bicycle. I hid it in the neighbor's garage until Derek's birthday, and then I pretended it was a surprise gift from both of us. Richard didn't speak to me for 3 days after that. Not out of anger, really. More out of sadness. He knew what I was doing. He knew where it would lead. But he loved me too much to fight with me about it. On the morning of my birthday, I woke up before dawn. I couldn't sleep. I had been lying in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, going over everything in my mind, rehearsing what I was going to say, preparing myself for what was about to happen. I got up and made myself a cup of coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Richard and I had shared so many mornings together, and I watched the sun rise through the window. The sky turned from black to purple to pink to gold, and I thought about my life. 70 years. I had been alive for 70 years. I had survived so much: the death of my parents, the years of infertility, the challenges of raising a child, the loss of my husband, and now this, the betrayal of my own son. But I was still here. I was still standing. And today, I was going to fight back. Derek and Karen showed up at 8 in the morning. The party wasn't until 2 o'clock. I asked them why they were so early. Derek said, "We want everything to be perfect for you, Mom. Karen's going to oversee the setup, and I'm going to keep you company." I thought we could go to breakfast, just the two of us, like we used to when I was a kid. When he was a kid. When he was innocent. When he actually loved me. I almost felt guilty about what I was going to do. Almost. But then I remembered the email. I remembered the $80,000 he had stolen. I remembered all the lies, all the manipulation, all the gaslighting. So I smiled and said, "That sounds lovely, Derek. Just let me get my purse." He took me to my favorite diner, the one on Main Street that has been there since 1952, the one with the red vinyl booths and the jukebox in the corner and the best pancakes in the state. Richard and I used to come here every Sunday morning after church. It was our tradition for over 30 years. Derek was charming that morning, more charming than he had been in years. He told me stories about the kids, funny things Emma had said at school, Jake's adventures in Little League. He asked about my garden, about my book club, about my life. He seemed genuinely interested. He seemed like the son I always wanted him to be. For 2 hours, I almost forgot what was about to happen. For 2 hours, I almost believed that Derek really loved me, that he really cared, that maybe I was wrong about everything. But then I remembered something Richard used to say. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Not who you want them to be, who they actually are. Derek had shown me who he really was. The email proved it. The stolen money proved it. Everything he had done over the past year proved it. This breakfast, this charm, this pretense of love, it was all part of the plan. It was all designed to make me comfortable, to make me trust him, to make me go along with whatever he was about to announce. I played along. I smiled and laughed and pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was counting down the hours. Inside, I was ready. When we got back to the house, it was transformed. Balloons everywhere, red and gold and silver, tied to every chair and doorknob and railing. A big banner stretched across the living room wall that said, "Happy 70th Birthday, Eleanor," in glittering letters. Flowers on every table, roses and lilies and carnations in beautiful arrangements. Music playing softly from speakers in the corners, old songs from my generation, Sinatra and Ella and Tony Bennett. Karen had outdone herself. I'll give her that. If the circumstances were different, I would have been genuinely impressed. She had turned my home into a celebration, a tribute to my life. But I knew the truth. I knew that all of this was just a stage set, a backdrop for the announcement that was coming, a way to make Derek look like the loving son who was only trying to help his confused, elderly mother. My friends started arriving around 1:30. Margaret was one of the first, as I knew she would be. She came through the front door and wrapped me in a tight hug, squeezing me so hard I could barely breathe. "Are you ready?" she whispered in my ear. I nodded against her shoulder. "I'm ready. I'm right here. Whatever happens, I'm right here." She let me go and smiled, and I saw that her eyes were shining with tears. Not Zad tears, warrior tears. She was ready to fight for me. More guests arrived. Barbara from my church group, the one who always brought homemade cookies to our meetings and never missed a Sunday service. Helen from next door, and who had been my neighbor for 38 years and had watched Derek grow up from a baby to a man. Frank and Linda from Richard's old construction crew, who still came to visit me every few months, to check on the house and make sure everything was in good repair. My cousin Martha came all the way from Ohio. We hadn't seen each other in 5 years, not since the last family reunion. She looked older, grayer, but her smile was the same. "Eleanor, you look wonderful. 70 looks good on you." "Thank you, Martha. It's so good to see you." By 2:00, the house was full. 47 people, all there for me. I walked through the rooms, accepting hugs and birthday wishes, feeling loved in a way I hadn't felt since Richard died. For a little while, I let myself forget what was coming. I let myself enjoy the party, the laughter, the company of people who genuinely cared about me. These were my people, my community, the friends and family who had supported me through the hardest times of my life. And soon, they were going to witness something they never expected. The party was supposed to be the happiest day of my year, the celebration of my 7th decade on this earth, a milestone birthday surrounded by everyone I loved. Instead, it became the day that changed everything. It happened at exactly 3:15. I remember because I had just looked at the clock on the wall, the old grandfather clock that Richard's parents had given us as a wedding present. It had stood in the same corner of the living room for 43 years, chiming every hour, marking the passage of time. I was thinking about how the party had been going on for over an hour, and everything was perfect. I was thinking that maybe I had been wrong about Karen. Maybe she really did want to do something nice for me. Maybe she was capable of kindness after all. I was standing by the fireplace, holding a glass of punch, talking to Barbara about the new pastor at our church. She was telling me about his sermon from last Sunday, something about forgiveness and redemption, and I was nodding and trying to pay attention, but my mind kept wandering. That's when Derek stood up. He was in the middle of the living room. The space had been cleared for dancing later, so there was a big open area in the center of the room. He walked into that space, like he was walking onto a stage, like he was about to perform. He picked up a fork and tapped it against his champagne glass. The room got quiet. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Everyone turned to look at him. Derek had this smile on his face, this confident, almost cocky smile, like he was about to give a toast at a wedding, like he was about to announce something wonderful, like he was the hero of this story. "Everyone, can I have your attention, please?" The room fell silent, completely silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I could hear birds singing outside the window. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I was standing by the fireplace, a glass of punch in my hand. I was smiling because everyone expected me to smile. They thought my son was about to say something sweet about me. They thought he was going to thank everyone for coming and tell me how much he loved me. That's what I would have thought, too, if I didn't know the truth. I want to thank you all for being here today to celebrate my mother's milestone birthday. 70 years is a long time, and my mother has lived a wonderful life. People were nodding, smiling. Some were wiping tears from their eyes, already emotional in anticipation of a touching tribute. My friend Barbara from church reached over and squeezed my hand. She thought Derek was being sweet. She had no idea what was coming. My mother has been an amazing woman. She raised me with love and patience. She supported me through every challenge. She was there for me when I needed her most. And now it's my turn to be there for her. More nods, more smiles, more tears. This was exactly what everyone expected. A loving son, honoring his mother on her birthday. But I knew better. I knew what was coming next, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the room must be able to hear it. But as many of you know, my mother is getting older, and with age comes certain challenges. Her memory isn't what it used to be. Her balance isn't great. She's had some close calls living alone in this big house. My smile started to fade, not because I was surprised, but because it was actually happening. He was actually doing this, in front of everyone I cared about. As her son, it's my responsibility to make sure she's safe. It's my responsibility to make sure she's cared for, and that's why I'm making this announcement today. He paused. He actually paused for dramatic effect, like this was some kind of performance, like this was a movie, and he was the star. I wanted to scream at him to stop, to tell everyone the truth, to expose him for what he really was. But I waited. I waited because I had a plan. I waited because I wanted him to finish. I wanted everyone to hear exactly what he was trying to do. Mom is moving to a nursing home today. The room went dead silent. Not quiet. Silent, the kind of silence that feels like a physical weight pressing down on you. The kind of silence that happens when no one knows what to say. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. I could hear someone's fork hit a plate in the dining room, dropped from a hand that had gone numb with shock. I could hear my own breath, slow and steady, because I had been practicing this moment for weeks. 47 people were staring at me, and I was staring at my son. Derek continued, like he didn't notice the shock on everyone's faces, like this was perfectly normal, like announcing that you're putting your mother in a nursing home at her own birthday party was just a regular thing that people did. Sunny Meadows is a wonderful facility. I've toured it personally. She'll have round-the-clock care from trained professionals. She'll have activities and friends her own age, and most importantly, she'll be safe. No more worrying about her falling down the stairs. No more worrying about her forgetting to take her medication. No more worrying about her being alone. I saw people starting to shift uncomfortably. Some were looking at me with concern. Some were looking at Derek with confusion. This wasn't what they expected. This wasn't a tribute. This was an announcement, a decision, made without my knowledge or consent. Karen and I have already made all the arrangements. The room is ready. The paperwork is signed. We'll be packing up some of Mom's things today, so she feels at home when she gets there. That's when Karen started walking toward the stairs with those empty boxes. She had been waiting for her cue. She had been standing in the corner, watching, waiting for the right moment to move. I know this might be a surprise, Derek continued, and I know some of you might be worried about Mom, but I hope you all understand that this is what's best for her. This is the loving thing to do. This is how we take care of our parents when they can't take care of themselves anymore. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My own son had just announced, in front of everyone I knew, that he was putting me in a nursing home. Without asking me, without warning me, without any discussion at all. He had presented it as a done deal, as a decision that had already been made, as if I had no say in my own life. And then I heard my granddaughter's voice. Little Emma, who was only 9 years old. She was standing near the dining table with her brother Jake, both of them confused by what was happening. She tugged on her father's sleeve and said, in the innocent, high-pitched voice of hers, "Daddy, why does Grandma have to leave? I don't want her to go." Derek patted her head like she was a puppy. "Grandma's going to a better place, sweetheart. Don't worry." A better place. Like I was dying. Like this was a funeral instead of a birthday party. Like I was already gone, and they were just handling the logistics of my departure. Something inside me snapped. All the years of enabling, all the years of making excuses, all the years of putting Derek's needs ahead of my own, all the money I had given him, all the lies I had told Richard to protect him, all the times I had looked the other way when he did something wrong. It all came rushing up inside me like a wave, like a tsunami of anger and betrayal and grief. Grief for the son I thought I had. Grief for the relationship that never existed. Grief for everything I had lost because I couldn't say no. I put down my glass of punch. I set it on the mantel very carefully because my hands were shaking. But I wasn't shaking from fear. I wasn't shaking from weakness. I was shaking from anger. 40 years of anger that I had been pushing down, making excuses for, pretending didn't exist. I walked to the middle of the living room, I walked right up to my son, who was still smiling, still thinking he had won, still thinking I would go along with this, like I had gone along with everything else. I stood right in front of him, close enough to see the confidence in his eyes, close enough to see the way he looked down at me, like I was already diminished, already defeated, already a burden to be dealt with, and I looked him dead in the eyes. "Derek," I said. My voice was calm, steady, stronger than I had expected it to be. "I have something to say." He looked surprised, genuinely surprised, like he expected me to just go along with this, like he expected me to be the same pushover I had always been, like he expected me to smile and nod and let him take everything I'd worked for my entire life. "Mom, maybe you should sit down. We can talk about this later. You're probably overwhelmed." "No, we're going to talk about this now, in front of all these people. Since you decided to make this a public announcement, I'm going to give a public response." The room was so quiet, I could hear people breathing. No one moved, no one spoke. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. I took a deep breath. I looked around the room at all the faces I loved. Margaret, standing near the kitchen doorway, with her hands clasped together. Barbara from church, still holding the plate of food she had been eating. Helen from next door, her eyes wide with shock. Frank and Linda, looking confused and concerned. These were my people, my witnesses, and they were about to learn the truth. "First of all," I said, turning back to Derek, "I am not going to a nursing home. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever until I decide it's time. That is my decision to make, not yours." Derek's face was turning red. The confident smile was starting to fade, replaced by something else. Irritation, frustration, the look of someone whose plan wasn't going the way he expected. "Mom, you're embarrassing yourself. We've talked about this. We've discussed it many times." "No, Derek, you talked. I never agreed to anything, and I certainly never agreed to be ambushed at my own birthday party in front of my friends and family." I heard murmurs around the room. People were starting to understand that this wasn't what they thought it was. This wasn't a loving son looking out for his mother. This was something else, something darker. I am 70 years old, not 90. I walk 2 miles every morning. I volunteer at the library 3 days a week. I maintain this house, this yard, and myself, without any help from you. My doctor says I'm in excellent health for my age. My mind is sharp. My body is strong. I am perfectly capable of living independently. Derek stepped toward me, lowering his voice, like he was trying to keep the conversation private. But everyone could hear him. "Mom, please. You're confused. This is exactly what we were worried about. You're having an episode. Let's just go somewhere quiet and talk about this." I almost laughed. Almost. He was still trying to gaslight me, still trying to make me doubt myself, still trying to paint me as the confused old woman who didn't know what was happening. But I wasn't confused. I had never been more clear-headed in my entire life. I am not confused, Derek. For the first time in years, I am seeing things exactly as they are. I turned to face the room. Every face was staring at me, some with shock, some with concern, and some, like Margaret, with something like pride. I want everyone here to know something that Derek and Karen have been very careful to hide. Derek grabbed my arm. "Mom, stop. This isn't the place." I pulled my arm away. "This is exactly the place. You made it the place when you stood up and announced you were shipping me off to a nursing home so you could take my house." Gasps, real, audible gasps, from around the room. People looked at Derek, then at me, then back at Derek. The confusion was turning into something else. Understanding. Suspicion. Yes, that's what this is about. This house. This house that my husband Richard and I built with our own hands 43 years ago. This house that's paid off. This house that's worth $450,000 in today's market. This house that Derek and Karen want for themselves. Karen came running down the stairs, still holding those empty boxes. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. Eleanor, you're confused. You don't know what you're saying. This is exactly what we were worried about. You're having some kind of episode. You're not thinking clearly. I turned to face her. My daughter-in-law. The woman who had been going through my papers. The woman who had been taking inventory of my possessions. The woman who had married my son for his. Potential inheritance. I am thinking more clearly than I have in years, Karen. I finally see you for what you are. Both of you. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was folded into quarters, worn from being carried around for weeks. I had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, rehearsing it. Do you know what this is? This is a printout of an email that Derek accidentally sent to me instead of his lawyer. Derek's face went from red to white. All the blood drained out of him. He looked like he was going to be sick. It was meant for Robert Jenkins at Jenkins Family Law. But Derek's fingers slipped, I guess, and he sent it to his contact, right above Robert in his address book, his mother. I unfolded the paper. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. I felt calm, powerful, in control. Would you like me to read it? I've memorized the important parts, but I'll read it anyway, so there's no question about what it says. Derek lunged for the paper. Give me that. You had no right to read my private emails. I stepped back, holding the paper out of his reach. You sent it to me, Derek. It's not private anymore. Margaret stepped forward, positioning herself between me and Derek. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her presence was enough. She was protecting me. I read the email out loud. Every word. Every damning sentence. Robert, we need to move fast on the conservatorship. My mother is starting to ask questions about where her money went. She called the bank last week to check on her accounts, and the teller mentioned some of the transfers. She doesn't know the full extent yet, but if she figures out the truth, she'll write me out of the will. Murmurs around the room, people looking at each other, trying to process what they were hearing. Karen found a facility that will take her tomorrow, but we can't get her to agree to go. She's stubborn, and she thinks she's still capable of living independently. We need to make it happen at the birthday party, in front of witnesses, so there are people to testify that she's confused and can't take care of herself. Once we have the conservatorship, we can sell the house and move her wherever we want. I looked up from the paper. The room was silent. Everyone was staring at Derek and Karen with horror on their faces. Let me know if you need anything else from me before we file the paperwork. Derek. I folded the paper back up and put it in my pocket. That is what my son thinks of me. That is what he was planning to do. He was going to have me declared incompetent. He was going to take control of my money, my house, my life. He was going to put me in a facility and sell everything I own. And he was going to use all of you as witnesses to make it happen. The room erupted. People were talking over each other, shouting, demanding explanations. My friend Margaret stepped forward and said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, I knew it. I knew. Something was wrong. I told you, Eleanor. I told you years ago. Derek was sputtering. His face was a mask of panic. He looked around the room, searching for an ally, searching for anyone who might be on his side. Mom, that's not... You're taking it out of context. I was just trying to protect you. The email doesn't mean what you think it means. Protect me? My voice rose for the first time. Protect me from what? From living my life? From spending my own money? From staying in my own home? From making my own decisions? I took a step closer to him, close enough to see the fear in his eyes, close enough to see the sweat on his forehead, close enough to see the boy I had raised, the boy I had given everything to, the boy who had become a man I didn't recognize. And there's one more thing, Derek. One thing you don't know. Something I've been preparing for weeks. I've been to see my own lawyer, I continued. Not your lawyer. Not Robert Jenkins, who is apparently helping you plan this whole scheme. My lawyer, Patricia Hendricks. I went to see her 2 weeks ago, right after I received your email by mistake, and I made some changes. Derek's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air. Karen grabbed his arm, her fingernails digging into his sleeve. What changes? Karen demanded. What did you do? I smiled. Not a kind smile, not a forgiving smile. The kind of smile that comes when you finally have the upper hand after years of being taken advantage of. First, I removed Derek's name from all of my bank accounts. He no longer has access to my money. He can't transfer another penny without my knowledge and consent. Derek made a choking sound. Karen's face went pale. Second, I contacted the bank about the $80,000 that was transferred out of my savings account over the past 18 months. $80,000 that I never authorized. $80,000 that Derek stole from me. More gasps around the room. People were looking at Derek with disgust now. Not confusion, not concern. Disgust. The bank has a record of every transaction, every transfer, every penny that was taken. And if I choose to press charges, Derek could face criminal prosecution for elder financial abuse. Derek found his voice. Mom, I can explain. That money was it was an emergency. I was going to pay it back? When, Derek? When were you going to pay it back? After you sold my house? After you had me locked away in a nursing home where I couldn't ask questions? After you took everything I had? He had no answer. There was no answer. The truth was out, and everyone in the room could see it. And third, I said, this house? It's no longer going to you. Not 1 cent of my estate is going to you. I changed my will completely. Karen dropped the boxes she was holding. They hit the hardwood floor with a hollow thud that echoed through the silent room. When I die, everything goes to charity. The children's hospital, where your father spent his last days, receiving the best care possible from nurses and doctors who actually cared about him, the library where I volunteer, where children learn to read and discover the magic of books, the animal shelter on Oak Street that rescues abandoned pets and finds them loving homes. All of it. Every single penny, every piece of furniture, every antique, every painting, every dish and spoon and pillowcase, everything I own will go to people and organizations that actually deserve it. I turned to face the room one more time. My friends, my community, the people who had come to celebrate my birthday and had instead witnessed the unmasking of my son. And one more thing, I said, my voice strong and clear. I want Derek and Karen out of my house. Right now. This is my home that I built with my husband, my home that I have lived in for 43 years, and they are no longer welcome here. I looked directly at Derek, my son, the baby I had waited 15 years to have, the child I had loved more than my own life, the man who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I'm giving you 5 minutes to leave. If you're not gone by then, I will call the police and have you removed, and I will press charges for the money you stole. Every penny of it. What happened next was chaos. Pure, unfiltered chaos. Karen started screaming. Actually screaming. Like a toddler throwing a tantrum in the middle of a grocery store. Her face turned red, and veins popped out on her forehead, and she stamped her feet on my hardwood floor like she was trying to break through to the basement. You can't do this. We have rights. Derek is your son. He's your only child. He's entitled to that house. He's entitled to your money. We spent years planning this. You can't just ruin everything. Years. She said years. They had been planning this for years. Not months. Years. The full scope of their betrayal was even worse than I had imagined. I just looked at her, calm, steady, completely unmoved by her tantrum. Derek is entitled to nothing. He stopped being entitled to anything the moment he decided to betray me, the moment he started stealing from me, the moment he planned to have me declared incompetent so he could take everything I own. Karen lunged toward me, her hands reaching for my throat or my face or the paper in my pocket. I'm not sure which, but she never got close. Margaret stepped in front of me, and Barbara was suddenly there too, and Helen from next door, and Frank and Linda. A wall of people protecting me from my own daughter-in-law. You need to leave, Margaret said to Karen. Her voice was ice cold. Now, before someone calls the police. Karen looked around the room, searching for support, searching for anyone who might be on her side. But there was no one. Every face in that room was looking at her with contempt. Every person there had heard the truth. Every person there knew what she and Derek had tried to do. Derek tried a different approach. He pushed past Karen and fell to his knees, right there in the living room. He grabbed my hands, tears streaming down his face, and he looked up at me with those eyes that used to look at me with such love when he was a little boy. Mom, please, I'm so sorry. I got caught up in Karen's plans. It wasn't my idea. She pushed me into it. She manipulated me. You know how she is. You've always known. Please, Mom, you can't cut me out. I'm your only child. I'm your son. I'm your miracle baby. Remember how long you and Dad tried to have me? Remember how much you wanted me? You can't just throw that away. I looked down at him, my son, kneeling at my feet, crying, begging, using every manipulation tactic he had learned over 40 years of getting whatever he wanted. I pulled my hands away from his grasp. You should have thought of that before you tried to steal my home and put me in a facility against my will. You should have thought of that before you took $80,000 from my bank account. You should have thought of that before you sent that email detailing your entire plan to defraud your own mother. I stepped back, putting distance between us. I loved you, Derek. I loved you more than anything in this world. I gave you everything. I sacrificed my marriage, my savings, my peace of mind, all for you. And this is how you repay me? By trying to steal everything I have left? Derek was sobbing now, ugly heaving sobs that shook his whole body. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please give me another chance. Please, Mom. I'll do anything. I'll pay back the money. I'll go to therapy. I'll never ask you for anything again. Just please, don't cut me out of your life. For a moment, just a moment, I felt my resolve waver. This was my son, my only child. The baby I had cried for, prayed for, waited 15 years to hold in my arms. How could I turn my back on him? How could I send him away and never see him again? But then I remembered Richard's words he had spoken to me so many times over the years. Words I had ignored, dismissed, made excuses for. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Derek had shown me who he really was. Not just today. Not just with the email and the stolen money and the nursing home scheme. He had been showing me for years. Every time he asked for money without gratitude. Every time he took without giving back. Every time he made me feel guilty for not doing more. I had just refused to see it. It's time for you to leave, Derek. I mean it. 5 minutes is almost up. Derek looked around the room one more time. He saw that he had no allies. Everyone there had heard the truth. Everyone there knew what he had tried to do. There was no one who would speak up for him, no one who would take his side. He stood up slowly, his knees cracking, his face wet with tears. He grabbed Karen's arm. She was still standing there with a look of fury on her face, and without another word, they walked out of my house. The front door slammed behind them so hard that the pictures on the wall rattled, and then the strangest thing happened. Someone started clapping. It was Margaret. Slow, steady applause, her hands coming together with deliberate, meaningful claps. Then Barbara joined in, then Helen, then Frank and Linda, then my cousin Martha from Ohio. One by one, every person in that room started clapping and cheering. 45 people applauding for me, celebrating not my birthday, but my liberation, my freedom, my refusal to be a victim anymore. I stood there in my living room, surrounded by the people who actually cared about me, and I started to cry. Not sad tears, not angry tears, relief tears. 40 years of being taken advantage of, and I had finally said enough. I had finally stood up for myself. I had finally chosen me. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself over my son. The party continued after that. If anything, it became more of a celebration than it had been before. People kept coming up to me and hugging me, telling me how proud they were, telling me how brave I was, telling me they had always known something was wrong with Derek and Karen, but didn't know how to say anything. Margaret never left my side, not for a moment. She kept my punch glass full and made sure I had a plate of food in front of me. She deflected the people who asked too many questions and gave me space when I needed a moment to breathe. The cake was cut around 5 o'clock. 70 candles, all lit, glowing in the dim light of the living room. Everyone sang happy birthday, and I closed my eyes and made a wish. I wish for peace. I wish for happiness. I wish for the strength to rebuild my life without my son in it. I blew out all 70 candles in one breath. Everyone cheered. Around 6 o'clock, the caterers started cleaning up. The guests started saying their goodbyes. My house slowly emptied until it was just me and Margaret sitting on my couch, the way we had sat 1,000 times before. Over 40 years of friendship, the house was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles over a space after a storm, the kind of quiet that feels heavy but also clean, like the air after rain. "Eleanor," Margaret said, breaking the silence, "I have to ask, did you really change your will? Did you really cut him out completely?" I nodded slowly. Every word I said was true. I went to Patricia 2 weeks ago, right after I got that email. I sat in her office for 3 hours, going over everything. I cut Derek out completely. Not a penny. Not a single item from this house. Nothing. Margaret let out a long breath. Good. He doesn't deserve anything from you, after everything he's done. I know, but it still hurts. He's still my son. He's still the baby I waited 15 years to have. I keep thinking about him when he was little, when he would pick dandelions from the yard and bring them to me like they were roses, when he would climb into my lap and ask me to read him stories, When he would tell me I was the best mommy in the whole world, my voice cracked on the last words. Margaret put her arm around me and pulled me close. That little boy is gone, Eleanor. Maybe he was never really there. Maybe we just saw what we wanted to see. Maybe, but it doesn't make it hurt any less. We sat there for a long time, not talking, just being together. The clock on the wall ticked away the minutes. The sun set outside the window, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Finally, Margaret spoke again. What happens now? I took a deep breath. Now I live my life. My life, Margaret. Not Derek's life. Not Karen's life. Not anyone else's life. Mine. I sat up straighter, feeling a new determination rising in my chest. I'm going to stay in this house until I die, or until I decide I don't want to anymore. Nobody is going to force me out. Nobody is going to make decisions for me. I'm going to spend my money on myself. I'm going to travel to places I've always wanted to see. I'm going to eat at nice restaurants and buy myself flowers and read books in the garden and do whatever I want, whenever I want. Margaret smiled. That sounds perfect. And I'm going to get a dog. I've always wanted a dog. Richard was allergic, so we never could have one. And then after Richard died, Derek always complained about pet hair on his clothes when he visited. Well, Derek isn't visiting anymore, so I'm getting a dog. Margaret laughed. What kind of dog? A big one, a really big one. Something that will love me unconditionally and never ask me for money. Maybe a golden retriever, or a German shepherd, or one of those big fluffy things that look like bears. We both laughed then, deep, healing laughter that felt like medicine for my soul. I was 70 years old. I had just lost my son. But sitting there with my best friend, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt free. The next few weeks were hard. I won't pretend they weren't. Derek called me 17 times the day after the party. I didn't answer a single call. He left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last, each one a different strategy to try to get me to respond. The first few messages were angry. He blamed me for embarrassing him. He said I had no right to air our family's dirty laundry in public. He said I would regret what I had done. The next few messages were threatening. He said he was going to hire the best lawyers in the state. He said he was going to prove I was mentally incompetent. He said he would get a conservatorship and take control of everything anyway. And then I would be sorry. The last few messages were pleading. He cried. He apologized. He said it was all Karen's fault. He said he was a victim too. He said he loved me, and he couldn't live without his mother in his life. I listened to all the messages, but I didn't respond to any of them. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with the consequences. 2 weeks after the party, I got a letter from Robert Jenkins, Derek's lawyer. It was a formal legal notice informing me that Derek was pursuing a conservatorship over me on the grounds of diminished mental capacity. The letter said I had 30 days to respond, or the court would proceed without my input. I called Patricia Hendricks immediately. She laughed when I read her the letter. They're desperate, she said. They know they've lost, so they're trying anything they can think of. But don't worry, Eleanor. We're prepared for this. I have statements from your doctor confirming you're in perfect mental health. I have statements from your friends and neighbors confirming you live independently and manage your affairs without any assistance. I have records from the library showing your volunteer work, and I have that email, the one Derek accidentally sent you. That email proves this whole thing was a scheme to steal your assets. No judge in the world is going to grant him conservatorship after seeing that. She was right. 3 weeks later, Derek's petition was denied. Not just denied, thrown out entirely. The judge called Derek's actions a shameful and calculated attempt to exploit and manipulate an elderly woman for personal financial gain. He recommended that Derek and Karen be investigated by Adult Protective Services for elder abuse. I heard through the grapevine, through Margaret, who heard it from her hairdresser, who heard it from someone who knew Karen's mother, that Derek and Karen were furious. They had spent over $15,000 on legal fees for nothing. Their plan had completely backfired, and now there was a permanent record of what they had tried to do. 6 months passed. Life went on. I adopted a dog. His name is Winston, and he's a 3-year-old golden retriever with the softest fur I've ever touched. The shelter said he had been surrendered by a family who was moving overseas and couldn't take him with them. Their loss was my gain. Winston sleeps at the foot of my bed every night. He follows me around the house during the day, his tail wagging constantly, his eyes full of adoration. When I walk my 2 miles every morning, he walks beside me, stopping to sniff every interesting smell, greeting every person we pass, like they're his long-lost best friend. For the first time in 8 years, since Richard died, I don't feel alone in this house. Margaret says Winston is the best thing that ever happened to me. She might be right. I started traveling too. Not big trips. I'm 70 after all, and long flights aren't as easy as they used to be, but small ones. Weekend getaways to places I had always wanted to see. The Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, where the air smells like pine and the views take your breath away. The beaches on the Gulf Coast of Florida, where the sand is white and the water is warm. A charming bed and breakfast in Vermont that Margaret had been telling me about for years. I spent my own money on myself, without guilt, without asking permission. For the first time in decades, I bought things because I wanted them, not because someone else told me I needed them. I bought new furniture for the living room, a comfortable sofa in a beautiful blue color that Richard would have loved. I renovated the kitchen, putting in new countertops and a better stove and one of those refrigerators with a freezer on the bottom. I hired a landscaper to redesign the backyard, adding a stone patio and a water feature and raised beds for vegetables. All the things I had been putting off for years because Derek and Karen kept asking for money, I finally did them. All the improvements Richard and I had talked about making someday, I finally made them. And you know what? It felt amazing. 8 months after the birthday party, I got an unexpected visitor. I was in the backyard with Winston, sitting on my new patio furniture and watching the sunset turn the sky into a painting. The water feature was bubbling softly. The flowers were blooming. Everything was peaceful. Then I heard the doorbell ring. I wasn't expecting anyone. Margaret usually just walked in. She had a key, and no one else came by unannounced anymore. My life was quiet now, predictable, the way I liked it. I went to the front door and looked through the peephole. It was Derek. He looked different, thinner, like he hadn't been eating well. Older, like the past 8 months had added years to his face. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was uncombed, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He didn't look like the polished, confident man who had stood in my living room and announced he was sending me to a nursing home. He looked like someone whose life had fallen apart. I didn't want to open the door. Every instinct told me to walk away, to pretend I wasn't home, to let him stand on the porch until he gave up and left. But something made me reach for the handle. Something made me turn the lock. Something made me open the door. "Mom!" His voice cracked on that single word. "Can I talk to you? Please? Just for a few minutes?" I didn't invite him in. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance to my home. my hand on Winston's collar because he was growling softly at this stranger he didn't know. "What do you want, Derek?" "I need to tell you something. I need to explain. I need you to understand what happened." "There's nothing to explain. You tried to steal my house and put me away. You stole $80,000 from my bank account. You hired a lawyer to have me declared incompetent. What else is there to say?" His eyes filled with tears. Real tears, streaming down his face, dripping off his chin. I had rarely seen my son cry. Even at his father's funeral, he had stayed stoic, controlled. "Karen left me." I waited. I didn't respond. "She left me 3 months ago, took the kids, and moved back in with her parents. She said I was a failure. She said I couldn't provide for her the way she deserved. She said she only married me because she thought I would inherit everything when you died. And now that you cut me out of the will, I'm worthless to her." I should have felt something. Sympathy, maybe, or satisfaction. But all I felt was tired. Tired of the drama. Tired of the manipulation. Tired of being caught in the middle of Derek's problems. "That's not my problem, Derek." I know. But Mom, I need you to understand. Everything was her idea. All of it. The nursing home, the conservatorship, everything. She was the one who found that facility. She was the one who wrote the plan. She was the one who made me go along with it. I didn't want to do it. I love you. You're my mother. But Karen, she has a way of making you do things. She has a way of twisting everything around until you don't know which way is up." I shook my head slowly. "You're a grown man, Derek. You're 40 years old. You made your own choices. You can't blame everything on your wife. You're the one who transferred money out of my account. You're the one who hired the lawyer. You're the one who stood up at my birthday party and announced you were shipping me off. That was you. Not Karen, you." He looked down at the ground, unable to meet my eyes. "I know, and I'm not trying to make excuses. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never should have listened to her. I never should have done any of it. You're my mother. You gave me everything, and I repaid you by trying to steal what little you had left." He was crying harder now, shoulders shaking, voice breaking. I wanted to believe him. Part of me, the part that was still his mother, the part that remembered holding him as a baby, watching him take his first steps, cheering at his little league games, wanted to pull him into my arms and tell him everything was okay. That's what I would have done 6 months ago. That's what I had always done. But I wasn't that person anymore. Derek, I hear your apology, and I acknowledge that you're sorry, but I'm not going to change my will. I'm not going to give you money, and I'm not going to pretend that what happened didn't happen. The trust is broken. It may never be repaired. I'm not asking for money. I don't want money. I just want a relationship. I want to be able to see you sometimes. I want my kids to know their grandmother. They miss you so much, Mom. Emma asks about you all the time. Jake drew you a picture last week. They don't understand why they can't see Grandma anymore. The mention of the children hit me hard. Emma and Jake, 9 and 7 years old. Beautiful, innocent children who had done nothing wrong. They were caught in the middle of this mess, punished for their parents' sins. I thought about Emma's face at the birthday party. The confusion, the fear, the way she tugged on Derek's sleeve and asked why Grandma had to leave. I thought about Jake, who used to love helping me in the garden. He would dig holes for the seedlings and water the plants and pick the tomatoes when they were ripe. He called me his garden grandma. Those children were innocent. Whatever Derek and Karen had done, Emma and Jake were not responsible. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying no either. Give me some time. Let me talk to Margaret. Let me figure out how I feel." Derek nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Thank you, Mom. That's all I'm asking. Just a chance to prove that I've changed. Just a chance to be your son again." He turned and walked back to his car. It wasn't the fancy SUV he used to drive. It was an older sedan, dented on one side, with rust around the wheel wells. Things had clearly changed for him since Karen left. I watched him drive away. Then I closed the door and went back to the patio where Winston was waiting for me. I talked to Margaret about it the next day. We sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and eating the blueberry muffins she had brought over from the bakery on Main Street. "You're not seriously considering letting him back into your life," she said, giving me that look she gives when she thinks I'm making a mistake. "I'm considering letting the grandchildren back into my life." "That's different." "Is it?" "Because those children come with Derek attached. You can't see them without seeing him. And where there's Derek, there's trouble. There's always trouble. Karen left him. For now. People get back together all the time. And even if they don't, Derek is still the same person who tried to have you declared incompetent. That doesn't change just because his wife divorced him. A leopard doesn't change its spots." I knew she was right. But I also knew that I was 70 years old, and I didn't know how many good years I had left. Did I want to spend them alone, completely cut off from the only grandchildren I would ever have? Did I want Emma and Jake to grow up without any memory of their grandmother? "I'm not going to make any decisions right now," I said. I told him I would think about it, and I will. But I'm not going to let him take advantage of me again. I learned my lesson. I learned it the hard way, but I learned it. Margaret reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I just don't want to see you get hurt again. You've been through so much." "I know, but life is about taking risks. And sometimes the biggest risk is closing yourself off from everyone who ever hurt you. Richard used to say that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of anger. I'm still carrying so much anger, Margaret. Maybe it's time to start letting some of it go." 3 months later, I invited Derek to bring the children for a visit. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon in September. The leaves were just starting to change color, red and gold and orange against the bright blue sky. The air had that crisp fall feeling that I had always loved. Cool, but not cold. Fresh and clean. Derek arrived with Emma and Jake just after lunch. The kids ran to me the moment they got out of the car, wrapping their arms around me like they had been waiting their whole lives for this moment. "Grandma! Grandma! We missed you so much." "Where's Winston?" "Mom told us you got a dog." "Can we play with him? Is he friendly? Does he like kids?" I took them to the backyard where Winston was waiting. He was thrilled to have playmates, running circles around them and licking their faces and fetching the ball they threw for him over and over again. Derek hung back, watching from the patio. He didn't try to come too close to me or force conversation. He just sat and watched his children play with the dog, a small smile on his tired face. After about an hour, I went and sat beside him. "They've grown so much," I said. "Emma looks more like Karen every day." "I know. Sometimes it's hard to look at her." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the kids run and laugh. "How are you doing, Derek?" "Really?" He sighed. "It's been hard. The divorce is almost finalized. Karen is getting most of everything because apparently she's the better parent, even though she's the one who moved the kids away from their father. I had to move into a smaller apartment. I'm working overtime just to make child support and keep a roof over my head. I didn't say anything. Part of me wanted to offer help, to write a check, to fix his problems the way I always had. Old habits die hard, but I kept my mouth shut. I'm not telling you this. So you feel sorry for me, he continued, as if reading my thoughts. I'm telling you because I want you to know I'm different now. For the first time in my life, I understand what it means to struggle. I understand what it means to work for things instead of expecting them to be handed to me. I understand what you and Dad went through all those years. That's good, Derek. That's really good. And I understand what I did to you. I think about it every day. How I treated you. How I took advantage of you for years. How you gave me everything, and I just kept taking and taking and taking. And when there was nothing left to take, I tried to steal the rest. I'm ashamed of myself. I'll be ashamed for the rest of my life. I looked at my son, really looked at him, the lines on his face, the gray in his hair, the humility in his eyes that I had never seen before. For the first time, I saw regret. Real, genuine regret. Derek, I'm not going to change my will, and I'm not going to give you money. I know I don't want you to, but I am going to let you be part of my life again, on my terms. You can bring the children here. You can visit. But if I ever see any sign that you're trying to take advantage of me again, any sign at all, it's over. Permanently. No more second chances. Do you understand? He nodded. I understand. Thank you, Mom. I won't let you down. I promise. We sat there in the afternoon sun, watching the kids play with Winston, and for the first time in over a year, I felt something like hope. I'm 72 now. 2 years have passed since that birthday party. Derek has kept his word. He brings the children every other weekend and never asks for money, never makes demands, never shows any sign of his old behavior. He got a promotion at work. He started therapy. He's becoming the man I always hoped he would be. Karen remarried and moved to another state. The children split their time between their parents, and they seem happy, well-adjusted, loved by both sides of their family. Winston is getting older, but he still greets me every morning with a wagging tail. Margaret still comes over for coffee. The garden still blooms every spring. I've learned so much from this experience. I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary. I've learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, no matter how old you are. And I've learned that people can change. Not always, not easily. But sometimes, when they hit rock bottom, when they lose everything, they finally wake up and see what they've become. My son hurt me deeply, but he also had the courage to apologize, to change, to earn back my trust, one small step at a time. I'm not naive. I know things could go wrong again. I keep my guard up. I protect myself. But I also believe in second chances. I believe in redemption. I believe that family, despite all its flaws, is still worth fighting for. If you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, I want you to know something. You are not alone. There are millions of parents out there being taken advantage of by their children, being manipulated, being gaslighted, being made to feel like they're the problem. You're not the problem, they are. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to protect yourself and your assets and your home. It's okay to cut people out of your life, even family members, if they refuse to treat you with respect. And it's okay to give second chances, if and when you're ready. That's your choice. not theirs, yours. You have the right to live your life on your own terms. You have the right to spend your money however you want. You have the right to stay in your home until you decide it's time to leave. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Not your children, not your in-laws, not anyone. Stand up for yourself. Use your voice. Protect what's yours. And remember, you are stronger than you think. So much stronger. I'm sitting on my patio now, watching another sunset paint the sky. Winston is snoring at my feet. The house is quiet and peaceful. This house that Richard and I built together. This house that Derek tried to take from me. This house that is still mine and will be mine until my last breath. I'm 72 years old. I've lost my husband. I almost lost my son. I almost lost everything. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm living my best life. That's what I want for you too. Whatever you're going through, whatever battles you're fighting, I want you to find that strength inside yourself. I want you to know that it's never too late. It's never too late to stand up. It's never too late to say no. It's never too late to choose yourself. One day at a time, one step at a time, one breath at a time. You've got this. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about this whole situation? Have you ever been through something similar with your own family? How did you handle it? What advice would you give to someone who's being taken advantage of by the people they love? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Share your story. Let's talk about it. And if this video meant something to you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one.